Hey everyone, welcome on into Falcons Today by Chat Sports. On today's episode, we're just going to round up the latest NFL trade rumors and see how it applies to the Atlanta Falcons, who have an obvious need that I don't think I need to really say one too many times, and that is edge rusher. So, with that being in mind, I do want to share what draft picks Atlanta has. This is always kind of a tough number to track down. The website I go off of, which is like Pro Transaction Sports, forgot to include the Taylor Heineke one. So they've got 5 picks by my count, but these things are always kind of tough to track when you've got a lot of trades from previous years involving conditional picks in the future. But for now, just keep your eye on this right here. But let's start with the first trade rumor that I think could be a big swing for the Falcons, and that is Browns defensive end ZaDarius Smith. He's a versatile player. He's played in both schematic fronts. He's been a 4-3 defense. He's also been in a 3-4 defense. So it wouldn't be too tough of an adjustment for him to go from a 4-3, which he currently plays in Cleveland, to a 3-4, which is what he played in Minnesota and Green Bay before he went to the Browns. But ZaDarius Smith, to me, might be the belle of the ball in terms of realistic and available trade candidates at the NFL trade deadline. Here's what Mike Jones from The Athletic recently wrote on Smith. The Browns could listen to inquiries about the 32-year-old Smith, but there's a hesitancy to unload him as well because of a belief within the organization that a season turnaround isn't out of the question. That belief will likely prompt the Browns to hang on to ZaDarius Smith. And so far this year, he's been their, just by the numbers, number one pass rusher. He's got 5 sacks. That leads the team, but obviously it's still Myles Garrett's defense. But as we watch the rest of this video, I invite all Falcons fans watching to kind of keep these guys in mind as you watch football on Sunday, to go, a win here or a loss there could increase or decrease the likelihood of that player getting traded. My prediction when it comes to 99 for the Browns, I don't think he's going to go to the Falcons. I think he's going to go to the Detroit Lions. I think they have a little bit more desperation for a true edge rusher after losing Aiden Hutchinson. Plus, the Falcons have just given me nothing to work with to actually believe they are going to go out and make a seismic addition. And ZaDarius Smith would be a seismic addition. I think he goes for a 4th or a 5th round draft pick. The Falcons don't really have a whole lot of picks right there in the early portion of day 3. Now, when the trades start flowing, we're going to be breaking it down here on the channel. So don't miss anything on Tuesday, November 5th. That's the NFL trade deadline. Go ahead and subscribe right now. Help us get to 29,300 subscribers. Next player to watch for is Giants edge rusher Azeez Ojulari, a Georgia native from Marietta, went to UGA, and now he's on a Giants team that is not only not very good, they are 2-6, but they don't really have a big role for him because they traded for Brian Burns, and their former top 5 draft pick, Kayvon Thibodeau, has been outshining Ojulari, a former 2nd-round draft pick of theirs, which could free up Azeez for a team like the Falcons. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tough. The Giants at 2-6 are definitely going to be the opposite of buyers. They might not be big sellers, but they are definitely going to be listening to phone calls. My question is, are the Giants desperately trying to trade Ojulari away? Probably not. The edge rusher position is probably the second most valuable position in football these days. After quarterback, it goes stopping the quarterback, and that's done with a good pass rusher. So even if he's not a starter on this team, the Giants probably like having a nice rotation at that position. So if you're going to pry Ojulari away from New York, you're going to have to give him a really good offer. And I get concerned that the Falcons might not be able to make a very good offer because they don't really have the deepest of pockets after giving up a 3rd-round draft pick for Matthew Judon and losing a 5th-round draft pick for allegedly tampering with Kirk Cousins. So ultimately, I think they might get priced out for Ojulari. Speaking of getting priced out, it's going to be tough for Trey Hendrickson. If you thought maybe the first 2 guys would be expensive, Hendrickson would probably be the most expensive player of the bunch. Now, before the season started, Hendrickson requested a trade because he was looking for a contract adjustment. Ultimately decided to kind of pull back on that trade request and just play out this year as well. But They have the Raiders coming to town, so it should be an easy win for Cincinnati. And at 4-5, they should have good enough reason to believe that they're not out of the playoff race. But if they were to lose, that could bring on a huge fire sale with someone like Hendrickson or T. Higgins on the way out. Now, Hendrickson, by the way, he's been their only good pass rusher this season, 7 sacks in 8 games. So if the Bengals have any hope this year of accomplishing anything, it's going to have to be with Trey on the field. So they would really have to wave the white flag if they decide to trade him. This would be your home run trade. This would be the Falcons give the Bengals a call and make them an offer that Cincinnati cannot refuse, even if they feel like they still have a good shot at this. And that's probably going to be a little bit too rich for my taste because I don't want to give up a first-round draft pick. And if you give up a second-round draft pick, man, now you're down to a first. What's that? A fourth and a couple sevenths. Like, that is skinny for the draft. So buyer beware with this one. It's going to cost you a pretty penny. We have more to get to on today's episode, so don't go anywhere. But first, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 10 million active members. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. Here are my selections for this upcoming weekend. I like the more on Kyle Pitts. He has been hot the last couple of weeks. Also like the more for Thursday Night Football as we filmed this during our live show on Thursday for CJ Stroud at half a touchdown, and more on Saquon Barkley's rushings. So download the app today and use code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, run your game. How about a familiar face for trade rumor number 4? Dolphins defensive tackle, the veteran Calais Campbell, might be available because the Dolphins at 2-5 really couldn't afford to lose at home last week to a below 500 Cardinals team, because it's not going to get any easier the next week on the road in Buffalo. So if Miami loses this game at 2-6, one would think that a 36-year-old defensive tackle is probably not in their long-term plans. And if someone is willing to give them anything for someone that's probably going to be gone in a few months and this season not going to be a playoff year, I would imagine that Miami would be very open to this. Now, Campbell at 2 sacks isn't all that enticing. However, he would lead the Atlanta Falcons immediately in sacks this year if he came over. That's how low the bar is. So I'll also mention it would be a little bit of an embarrassing trade for Terry Fontenot. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking about this from a simplistic level. He could have signed Campbell. He didn't. Campbell goes to Miami, and then he ends up giving up a draft pick for someone he could have had back in free agency. The only thing you're really saving is you don't have to pay Campbell quite as much because you're only paying half of his salary for half a season. But I think that Terry Fontenot would rather pay the full salary, not give up a draft pick for someone he could have had from the start. And so I wonder if Fontenot goes, no, I can't make this trade. It would be such an embarrassment and such a self-own of the Atlanta Falcons trade for a player that they had last year and then let walk and then wanted him back. That's not a very good look for the GM. Before we look at the 5th and final trade rumor, predict the score for me on Sunday. Falcons versus Cowboys. I'm going to say Atlanta wins 49-14. I'm thinking this is going to be an ass-kicking up and down the field from start to finish. 5th guy to watch for, a different position. It is former Oklahoma Sooner Brian Asamoah, a linebacker who just hasn't really found a home in Minnesota in their starting lineup or on the field much at all. He was a day 2 draft pick by the Vikings. Jeremy Fowler from ESPN said that he's a trade candidate for Minnesota. I mean, he basically lost his starting gig to a UDFA last year, Ivan Pace out of Cincinnati. This year, there's not a whole lot to talk about with Asamoah. He just hasn't had a big role on this defense at all. He doesn't get on the field very much to begin with. So the Vikings could be open to trading him. I'm sure they are very much open to it if they get a fair offer. So the question really comes down to, is any team going to ask for Asamoah? The reason why I bring him up is you've got Troy Anderson, who's been battling a knee injury. You got Landman, who spent time on IR earlier this year. And you got Bertrand, your rookie from Notre Dame, in concussion protocol right now. You are very skinny at inside linebacker. And Caden Ellis is basically wearing two hats, outside pass rusher and inside linebacker. Like, he is playing all over the field right now. So maybe Raheem Morris goes, we just got to bring in some depth at that position just so we can get Anderson and Landman some time to get healthy and hold down the fort a little bit. One more sleeper trade target I would toss out there is Jadeveon Clowney. I would be shocked if he's on this team on November 6th. I mean, his career is kind of coming to an end soon. He's getting up there in the age column for sure. He's not producing much for Carolina anyway. This team's obviously going nowhere. Now, obviously, interdivision trades are rare, but I don't feel like these two franchises are so bitter against one another. They can't swap a 30-plus-year-old defensive end for a future 7th-round draft pick. They're rare, but division trades do happen. Go ask TJ Hawkinson about it. So this would be a sleeper one to keep an eye on. So let me know what your predictions are. Will the Falcons trade for an edge rusher? Like, do you believe they're actually going to get it done, or are they going to stand pat? Let me know in the comment section below.